20 years after the mysterious disappearance of famous video game developer Kevin Flynn, his son Sam, who has been haunted by the disappearance of his father since he was a child, is drawn to Flynn's arcade by a strange signal. Upon arriving, Sam is pulled into the same cyber world that his father has been trapped in for the past 20 years, the Grid. With the help of a fearless warrior Korra, Sam and Flynn must escape the Grid, a magnificent universe that is more dangerous than Flynn could have possibly imagined. Tron, the sci-fi adventure film released in 1982, written and directed by Steven Lisberger. By the way, if that's not how I say your name, sir, I really apologize. I'm not really good with names. Anyway, that movie was based off a story by Lisberger and Bonnie McBird. At the time of the film's release, it was considered a moderate success, with many critics giving it positive reviews which particularly praised the acting and its groundbreaking visuals for the time. Although the film's story was criticized for being incoherent, Tron would go on to receive nominations for Best Costume Design and Best Sound at the 55th Academy Awards, and it received an Academy Award for Technical Achievement 14 years later. Why? Because the Academy thought that using computer-generated effects is cheating somehow. Jump forward to the year of 2010, the 17th of December to be specific, a little overly specific, but anyway, and now we have Tron Legacy, a sequel to the original 1982 movie set 20 years after the first movie. When I saw the trailer for this movie, I came pretty close to crapping my pants right there and then, in that cinema. The visuals looked amazing. Jeff Bridges was coming back and the story seemed very ambitious from what I could see in the trailers. Point is, I was crazy excited for this movie. Tron Legacy had begun production in 2005 and was originally going for a Matrix-style approach until Joseph Kosinski was hired to direct 2 years later. Kosinski wasn't confident in the Matrix-esque approach and was able to convince Disney to go on a different one after he filmed a high concept which was used as a conceptualization of the universe that would go on to be presented in Legacy. It was after this that principal photography began in Vancouver's central business district over the course of 67 days. Unfortunately, upon Tron Legacy's release, it was met with mixed reviews. While the visuals, soundtrack, and production design were heavily praised, most of the criticism was directed at the story, performances, and character development. The first time I saw this movie was actually when it came out in 2009, and to tell you the truth, while that first trailer got me insanely excited, something weird happened. Over time, my hype for this movie just kind of dissipated. I'm not really sure why, and I can't really remember why, but it didn't really help that I'd entered a phase in my life where it was Star Wars or nothing. So, my hype was still kind of there, but it just kind of depleted, if that makes sense. I was excited and then I wasn't so excited. Anyway, I went to see this movie with my family because they wanted to see it, and you know what? I'm glad I saw it. I really am glad I saw this movie when it came out. What I'm about to say here is going to sound extremely hyperbolic, but I don't care, because it's my opinion and I wish to express it. Tron Legacy is one of my favorite movies of all time. I'm not even joking. I have loved this movie for as long as I can remember. Is it the best movie ever made? Nope. Is it perfect? Far from it, but with that said, for me at least, Tron Legacy is a movie I can watch again and again and never get bored with it because, oh my god, this movie is awesome. Just to be clear, this video is completely spoiler-filled, so if you haven't seen Tron Legacy, please go watch that movie first and then come back to this video. Otherwise, proceed at your own risk. Point is, you've been warned. Firstly, the story. The first movie dealt with faith versus nihilism or atheism. It took place in a world where programs didn't actually believe that they were in fact created by users who are in fact us. In Legacy, the users are still considered to be beings of myth, however this time the programs do actually know of their power and some of them even worship them. For starters, you have Clue, an exact copy of Flynn who was created by Flynn to create the perfect system. When Flynn created Clue, Clue was created when Flynn had not yet accepted that nothing is perfect and nothing can be perfect. Flynn was obsessed with creating the perfect system, a perfect world without imperfection, which would explain Clue's obsession with perfection. When Flynn first discovers the isomorphic algorithms, aka the ISOs, he sees them as his gift to the world, because they were created by the grid, they manifested within the grid. They were wise, they could not carry disease, they had science and philosophy. As Flynn put it, they were essentially biodigital jazz. The grid improvised and created its own life. They shattered Flynn's intentions of creating the perfect system, and instead Flynn would do everything in his power to ensure that they were his gift to the world. I think this movie conveyed this extremely well, save for one characteristic of Kevin Flynn, which I'll talk more about in a sec. This in turn would make Clue feel neglected by Flynn, and he began to see the ISOs as imperfect beings because unlike the other programs that exist within the grid, they had no purpose, they were just there. To Clue, the ISOs were an infestation that needed to be eradicated. Clue's purging of the ISOs could be seen as a metaphor for the idea that to seek perfection is to seek destruction. However, you could even argue that Clue destroyed the ISOs out of jealousy, which leads me to why I love Clue as a villain. Yeah, I'll admit, Clue's CGI is a huge problem in this movie. He is essentially a de-aged version of Jeff Bridges that looks uncanny in all the wrong ways. While there are some shots where he does look genuinely impressive, the rest of the time he looks like a rubbery something out of an early PS3 game. His personality, though, is something to be applauded. Clue in some ways is exactly like Flynn. He looks like him, he talks like him, and he even uses some of the same phrases that Flynn uses, or as I call them, dude phrases. But at the same time, he's a direct contrast. For one, he's younger, and the same age Flynn was when he himself was obsessed with perfection, which in itself suggests that with age comes wisdom. Flynn in his old age has now accepted that nothing can ever be perfect, whereas Clue doesn't age and doesn't possess the capacity to believe that perfection is impossible because he was programmed to believe it is possible, which acts as his motivation for destroying the ISOs and hating the users for their imperfection. Again, though, you could argue that Clue's eradication of the ISOs was actually out of jealousy due to the fact that once the ISOs were discovered, Flynn drew all his attention away from Clue, which in turn made Clue feel neglected by his creator and father. Jeff Bridges without a doubt gives the best performance in the whole movie, or in this case, performances. He is essentially playing a dual performance here, and he nails both Flynn and Clue perfectly. Bridges exceptionally captures the jokey, cocky, and lovable dude nature of Kevin Flynn, while also capturing the narcissistic, merciless, yet unconventionally creepy and eccentric quirkiness of Clue. I would even say that Bridges is so good that his performance acts as a distraction from the fact that his de-aged CGI counterpart looks like ew, stop moving! The opening scene between Flynn and a young Sam is still emotional and heartfelt despite the uncanny value of the CGI thanks to Bridges' phenomenal performance and Owen Bester's young Sam. In fact, the best scene with both Clue and Flynn is near the end of the movie where Flynn and Clue finally confront each other. We finally see Flynn admit his mistake. That it's his fault that Clue's goal to create the perfect system corrupted him. A really powerful and poignant moment, not only because of the redemption on Flynn's part, but also because you can see a glimmer of happiness in Clue's eyes as he finally gets the apology and acknowledgement from Flynn that he felt he deserved. Flynn and Clue, ironically, are expressions of non-duality. They are halves of the same whole, which is why Flynn can't blame Clue for what he became, because Clue is Flynn, Flynn is Clue. They're the same person despite their differences. Although if I had one criticism with Kevin Flynn as a character, I do find it a little convenient that Flynn just so happened to pick up Buddhism in the 20 years he's been trapped in the grid. It's a good idea and I can totally see why he would do it, but in this movie it just kind of feels like a plot device to go along with the movie's themes, and there are some moments where the line between the dude and Flynn, parts of his personality, get a little muddled. Garrett Hedlund does a pretty good job as Sam Flynn. He does capture the absence of a father and someone to look up to very well, which is what makes Sam's reunion with Flynn all the more powerful. The back and forth between Hedlund and Bridges is the glue that holds this movie together. A lot of the scenes with these two are essentially about Sam and his father trying to rebuild their relationship after spending 20 years apart from each other. When the two finally reunite, it's awkward and uncomfortable, and not just because they can't believe they're even seeing each other again, but also because they don't really know each other anymore. They don't click like they used to, and it's from there that they slowly begin to rebuild their relationship. Some of the movie's best moments come from Sam and Flynn just telling each other what they've missed and all the things that have happened during the 20 years apart. Olivia Wilde is also a highlight of this movie. She captured the childlike innocence of Cora beautifully, while also being a total badass. Cora is an ISO and in Clue's eyes imperfect. Her character further establishes the contrast between the ISOs and a self-serving program such as Zeus by removing oneself from the equation, and even attempts to give her life in order to save Flynn and Sam. Rinsler is awesome. He is a really intimidating side villain, and he has some of the best scenes in the entire movie. He's not in it as much as I would like him to be, but every minute this character is on screen, he's awesome. His first scene where he fights Sam in a disc battle is amazing for its music, choreography, direction, and I cannot get enough of the part where the arena is flipped upside down and Sam is just barely holding his own trying to block Rinsler's attacks. It's just such a thrilling and exhilarating scene. That scene perfectly established this guy as a scary yet badass dude. With that said, I don't like the reveal that Rinsler is actually Tron, or at least how it was actually handled. Don't get me wrong, I really like the idea of Tron being repurposed and enslaved by the main villain in order to do these horrible things for them, but I just wished it was explored more and given more depth. I mean, Tron was basically the main character of the first movie. His name is literally the title of both of these movies, so wouldn't it have been cool to see an arc where Tron would slowly realize who he actually is and over the course of time begin to reshape his identity and reclaim his old self? Imagine how compelling that would have been. Whereas the way it's executed in this movie is essentially just a few short scenes of Flynn realizing that Rinsler is actually Tron, and then Tron out of nowhere without any explanation just remembering who he was right before he sacrifices himself to save the Flynns, and Cora right after an admittedly amazing light jet battle. That's it. While it is hinted that Tron survives, I just wish that his arc wasn't so rushed to the point where it just feels like it was added in for shock value. And I really have to ask, why is this movie called Tron Legacy if Tron himself isn't even one of the main characters? Plus, as cool as Rinsler is, it is so obvious that he's Tron for one simple reason. Interesting symbol you got there on your chest. I totally haven't seen that before! Michael Sheen as Zeus is really good despite his minimal screen time. He is suitably over the top and really entertaining to watch. He clearly didn't care that he wasn't going to be in the movie all that much, and he just gave the part his all, and boy was it worth it. He absolutely owned the nightclub scene with his over-the-top personality and one-liners. That and his selfishness acts as a perfect contrast to Cora's selflessness. Also, fun fact, the writer and director of the original movie, Steven Lisberger, makes a cameo in the background of this scene as a bartender. The action sequences in Tron Legacy are some of the best action sequences I think I've ever seen. The choreography is outstanding in the hand-to-hand combat scenes and disc battles, all of which thankfully make clever uses of medium to wide shots where you can see the characters either from the waist up or from head to toe, just so you can get a full view of the action that's taking place, and it doesn't disappoint. However, the absolute standout action sequence for me is without a doubt the light cycle battle. This scene is the living definition of incredible. The light cycle battle, or Challenge of the Grid as it's called, is a scene that gives me goosebumps every time I watch it because of the tension, the velocity, and the sheer epicness of this scene. After I saw this movie for the first time, light cycles quickly became one of my favorite science fiction vehicles of all time because of the way they're used in combat, as well as the way they just spill out of these tiny batons to form these crazy, futuristic, badass, glowing looking bikes. Although, 90 to 99% of this scene would not be possible without the visuals. The visuals in Tron Legacy are incredible. Love or hate this movie, you cannot deny that this is a beautiful movie that brings the grid to life perfectly. A grand total of 10 companies were involved with the extensive effects work on this movie, which was also shot in 3D to further emphasize the realism of the grid, but also because 3D, I mean, it makes money, apparently. It's arguable that the grid itself is a character in this movie, possibly the main character with all its flashing lights, its unique design, the inhabitants that evolved from the users in the real world. I could genuinely watch the establishing shots of the grid all day long because this world is just so beautiful! Even though everything looks updated from the first one, you can still look at this movie and think Tron, but at the same time it has its own unique look and feel which gives this movie its own sense of style that perfectly realizes the digital landscape of the grid. Daft Punk, who also cameo in this movie, are the guys behind the soundtrack, and I'll admit, I'm not the biggest fan of their music. Not that their music is bad or anything, it's really good, it's just not something I would listen to 24/7. That said, their score for this movie is one of the greatest film scores ever composed. As expected, it does incorporate a lot of their trademark electronic music, but they also mesh it together with orchestral sounds, making the music sound like a weird and wonderful hybrid of orchestral music and electronic music, and it's amazeballs. It really does do a lot for the action sequences in terms of tension and suspense, but it's also great in the establishing shots of the grid. My favourite tracks from this score are definitely Rinsler's theme and The Game Has Changed, which plays during the light cycle battle. The only other issues I have with this movie are really just little things that I wish could have been explored more, like the revolutions that are trying to fight back against Clue. What we got was cool, I just wanted more of it. The dumbest moment in the movie for sure is in the climax, where after Clue kicks Flynn down to the ground, Sam decides that getting his disc out to de-res the dude isn't a good idea apparently, and decides that punching Clue square in the face twice, and then rugby tackling him is the better option. Unsurprisingly, he gets his ass quite literally flipped. Brilliant, Sam! Well done! On the whole, this movie is just fun, occasionally emotional, and oh my god, it's beautiful. It's not a perfect movie, there are negative things that even I, as someone who loves this movie, can say about it, but I just cannot stop loving this movie. To me, this is a great movie, not just because of its stunning visuals, action sequences, and soundtrack, but also because of its metaphors, its themes, and even its characters, and the way they contrast with each other. Yeah, I know, it sounds like I'm gushing over this movie a little, and possibly even drooling over it, but whatever. I love this movie. 8.5 out of 10. It's awesome! So those are my thoughts on Tron Legacy. I do hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thank you so much as always for watching. Sorry this is coming a month and a half late after the last one. I'm just kind of at a busy stage of my life. But anyway, thank you so much again for watching. And until next time, I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care, guys.